Welcome to the Nomad Futurist podcast, where ideas shape the future and visionaries redefine what's possible. Join us as we dive deep into the evolution of technology, society, and human potential, spotlighting the voices driving change and reimagining our world. Connect with us and join us at media.nomadfuturist.org. The future is a story we write together. Let's kick it off. Here are your hosts, Phil and Nabeel. Hello. Welcome to Nomad Futurist. This is your co-host, Nabeel Mahmood, calling in from Scottsdale, Arizona.
This is your co-host, Phillip Koblence from Montclair, New Jersey.
Hi, this is Arnav, and I am tuning in from New York City.
Arnav, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. This is actually going to be one of the first of its own kind over here. We've had a few young people come onto the podcast platform before, but nobody by themselves. Arnav, it recently joined us as one of our ambassadors, recently joined us one of our advocates, and lovely to have you on board. Thank you for showing the interest and being a part of the initiative. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you up to these days and where you're at?
I am currently a student at NYU. I'm a senior and graduating in May. Then my background on the corporate side or through my internships has been primarily in finance. I worked at a wealth management firm or at UBS in the wealth management team. Then I worked at a small private equity company called EG Capital. Then this summer I worked in investment banking at Barclays, investment banking, the debt capital markets and corporate banking team. Now I am interested in the digital infrastructure industry and trying to build this infrastructure in India. And that's my goal right now.
For starters, you go to college in New York, right?
Okay.
And what's your major?
I am majoring in business engineering with concentration in finance.
How does somebody end up picking that and want to get into the data infrastructure sector?
The story to that is very interesting. It started when I was working at Barclays. I was also covering the tech team at Barclays. And when I was covering the tech team, when I just started my internship, one of the projects that gave me was to research about NVIDIA. And because NVIDIA didn't have much deal work happening with Barclays, they only just had a couple of bond deals and Barclays was just co-manager. And we're like, okay, this company is making so much money. Why are we not doing anything with them? They gave me a job of like just researching about the company, going through their financials, 10K, figuring out what we can do from either investment banking perspective or corporate banking perspective. Then when I was going to the 10Ks and 10Qs, what I saw was that they were making a lot of money from this industry called data centers. And I was like, okay, that's very interesting because I had a little bit of perspective on data centers because when I was coming to NYU, I interviewed for the Stern Real Estate Club. And when I was interviewing for them, I researched about data centers a little bit because it was 2021 when I started NYU and then when I was interviewing for the club. And obviously data centers at that point were also on a boom. I knew a little bit about data centers, but not much. I was like, okay, NVIDIA is making so much money from data centers, what it is. Then what happened was that I was seeing that they made a lot of money from 2023 to 2024 and also 2022 to 2023. It was just like their revenue increased by like 200% from 2022 to 2023 and like 250% from 2023 to 2024. And I'm like, okay, what is this? I started researching about the industry more, how it serves people, what is the purpose of the industry, what's the value proposition, how the industry operates, and then started learning more about it. Then after the internship, I went back to India and I was just like, does India have a huge requirements for data centers? And obviously just because of the sheer population, how many people are using technology, the data center demand has grown hugely in India. I started networking with people in India, connected with a couple of data center providers such as ControlS and then also Edge Connects, which is now partnering up with Adani Connects to create Edge Connects in India. And I connected with these people, networked with them, and then I started understanding what's the need, how I can build this, what should be the next steps. That's how I got exposed to the industry and got into the digital infrastructure.
We always talk about like the characteristics that are super useful in anybody's career. And the first one is curiosity and just the idea of you leveraging curiosity through kind of research and kind of continuing to peel that onion is fascinating. And I think will certainly serve you well as you go in your career. Let's take a step back a little bit. You started NYU in 2021. Obviously, the focus was finance and technology. I imagine finance was the driver for it, as typically is the case. How did you wind up in NYU and how did you wind up with a concentration in finance? Was it something that was kind of an example from you at home? Where did you grow up? What did your parents do? Brothers, sisters, the whole bit.
To start with my background, I'm from New Delhi, India. My family have their own businesses. One, we manufacture and export toys. Then we also have a little bit of garments and textile side of the business. We also have a little bit of rental real estate business from past generations, passing it on. I was always involved with the business industry. When you were in India, I took CBSE curriculum. But when you do that, when you're in 10th grade, you pick 3 streams. So it's either you can go into the science stream, or you can go into the commerce stream, which is business studies, accounting, econ, and then, or you can go to the humanities stream, which is like political science, history, geography, and that side of the world, although it's called arts back in India. So I picked commerce when I was in 11th standard. That was basically a leeway for me to get into the business industry. It is very funny that I knew I wanted to get into finance, but obviously I didn't understand what finance is. I can give you a perspective of how I want to get into the financial industry. It was so funny that my mom used to make us do these things like, so what do you want to do? Because as a kid, I want to become an astronaut, which is not something I would have done because I was never good at science that much, or like physics or chemistry. But then I realistically started like looking into what industries I want to go to. And my grandfather used to like read the Economic Times, and I used to be like very pretentious and just start reading the Economic Times, pretending that I am trying to do something in the market, and or like I'm listening to the stock market. And then I used to just sit down with my grandfather and be like, okay, I'm reading Economic Times. I think so. That's what I was like, oh, I am going to take commerce and I'm going to become something in the financial industry. That's where my journey to the finance started. Then obviously when I was applying for colleges, I knew I wanted to do something with a concentration in finance, but I knew that if I wanted to live in the United States for longer, you have to take a STEM major. That's why I was just like, okay, I'm going to add the technology / engineering part of it, because you get a 2-year extension in your OPT. That's where that part got added on to the curriculum. And that's where my basic knowledge in finance started. Why NYU? NYU was by chance because I initially applied to colleges in the UK. I didn't even apply to colleges in the US. And then slowly and steadily, when I came to the US, it was basically my aunt's wedding. I came to the US when I was applying for colleges, and my uncle is also in the financial industry. And he was just like, you're being stupid applying to colleges in the UK, applying to colleges in the US. Exposure is better. College education is better. I'm not saying UK education is not good, but I'm saying for the financial realm, US pays you more. Exposure is more, markets are more mature as compared to the UK. If you want to get into the financial industry, apply to the US. Like there's no point in applying to the UK. And that's why I also had to drop 6 months, because I've never given the SAT, because I didn't give the SAT because I was going to the UK. Then I gave the SAT, got a decent score on my SAT. And then I was applying to universities, went to a university in Ohio for my first semester, which was an amazing experience. I saw that part of the United States was amazing. And then transferred into NYU right after that, because I guess NYU accepted me. And then I always wanted to be in New York. And the 2 colleges I applied to was Cornell and NYU. And then MIT got rejected as soon as possible. And then Cornell waitlisted, and then NYU I got accepted.
How many brilliant careers do you think start with an uncle that tells the person they're being stupid? Like all the great crowd. So I imagine Steve Jobs was like, he had an uncle. He's like, you're just being stupid. He's like, fine, I'll do this. And then look what happened.
Yeah, I still remember that conversation. It was like, why you're not applying to the US? If you were leaving India, why you're not applying to the US? It's the best country to be in terms of education, in terms of exposure, in terms of career growth. So apply here. And then I was just like, yeah, completely makes sense. And then I pretty much applied.
Well, so it certainly does make a lot of sense with the financial exposure and the businesses that you grew up or were around with. Let's step back just for a bit and peel this onion. How many siblings do you have?
I have one sibling, one older brother, who's also helping me in my venture right now. We are hands and ground trying to figure out what we can do, how we can do it. And yeah, just one sibling. I live in a joint family. I have 2 other siblings who live in my house. They're my first cousins. I also grew up with them, but only one sibling, like my real sibling, is just only my brother.
Okay. Now, growing up, you said that you wanted to be an astronaut, right?
Yeah.
That's STEM science. You got to be a rocket scientist. Anyhow, break this conventional mindset, the stereotypical mindset that people have that anybody that's from India or Asia has got to be a doctor or an engineer. How does that go about? Like, hey, I don't want to do anything with that. I have an interest that I want to do, but I'm not really sure about it because I probably might not be as strong in science as it needs to be. But by the way, I want to be in finance. How did that conversation go about?
Especially in my family, and everybody around me is from a business family. We have a little bit of safe netting. that allows us to be very flexible in the career choices that we make. That's one thing. India is evolving in that sense a lot, especially with the newer generation coming in and their interest in business. India has become a startup hotspot. People launching their business, it's a startup factory at this point. There's so many great minds, so many bright minds there. People have that acumen. There's already been a shift of people being like, oh, I don't want to be a doctor or I want to be a lawyer. There's a huge shift in the Indian thinking in that perspective. My parents have been very flexible in terms of what do you want to do. They were more about try and figure out yourself rather than them telling me like, do this or do that. I don't know what the practical reason for it is, but they never forced us to do something that we did never ever wanted to do. I wanted to play cricket. I played cricket. I wanted to play football. I played football in that sense as well. And then they always focused more on just do whatever you want to do, figure it out on your own. And I always never forced to do anything in terms of choosing a career path. I know that there is a thinking in the Indian household or Indian mentality that doctor and being lawyers is a big thing, but the shift is there, especially for the last coming 10 years. People are seeing that starting your own company is a good thing. Getting into the financials is a huge thing. There's been a huge shift. And I also think that the safe netting or kind of a protection we have does give us a lot of flexibility as compared to other people in my country.
Is this the first time in history that I am in the minority as the only non-cricket player?
Well, not only that, you're in a minority because you're the non-brown person here too.
I'm also the only bald person. I am checking every box.
How do you feel now?
You know what? I like being exotic. I don't know what everyone's complaining about.
Just to go back to where you started earlier about your engagement with NVIDIA and getting exposed to the data infrastructure sector, that was very, very recent. You were with Barclays June through August timeframe of last year. And then you got engaged, you reached out to us, and then we took you over to Data Center Dynamics in New York City as well and started exposing the sector to you. This has happened in a very short time. How is that going for you personally and as well as your immediate family? Because now you've thrown another curveball in the mix. Well, guys, listen, finance, that's what I'm going to go to college for. That's what I'm getting the degree for. But I've found this very niche play of data infrastructure that's a potential career path I want to take.
Family, it's very supportive. I'm doing it with my brother. So family is very supportive. I saw my parents grow or my grandparents grow. We have been just risk takers. We have switched industries so many times because of our business as well. We started from the undergarment industry in India. We also had the property sides of properties were there, but we started from the undergarment industries. Now my dad switched to the toys industry. So there has been these risk-taking abilities. From a business perspective, is the change. They have never questioned it. My dad was the person who just said, I like in a way that I didn't expose my dad to this side of the industry much. I was just telling him that I'm doing something in the digital infrastructure industry. And then when I went to India, I obviously needed to use his contacts or needed his help. That's when I told him about it. And it was never a question. There was no, why you want to do this? Obviously, they said that I'm still going to look for a position in the US, and I am in the process of it. I do have finance offer already. So I'm most probably going to stick to that for a couple of years because I want to create a background. So for 2, 3, 4 years, I still do want to work in finance, do want to work in investment banking, and then go from there. So it's going to be a gradual shift. It's not that I am going to leave my financial background and switch to digital infrastructure completely because I cannot do that. There's a huge roadmap that I have to create and walk through before I jump into saying that I'm going to put this on ground in India. So we're doing that roadmap side by side to my career. My brother's similar. He's working in the financial or the consulting industry right now in India. So he's also handling his career side by side to the business. It's kind of going parallel, not I'm leaving this and going there. Because obviously I understand my dad's perspective as well a little bit because he did have a question about it, or my family's perspective a little bit. Not only my dad, my mom also. She's way more involved in my career than my dad. I understand their perspective as well because they're like, you've done so much in the financial industry where you have got this exposure and we have put XYZ of money into your education to be in New York. Why would you leave that and just completely switch to a career in making digital infrastructure? While that's the end goal and that's going to be something that I will prioritize in the future. But right now, for the 2 years, I will be working in finance, in banking, and then on the parallel, working on this business and then switching to the infrastructure. I know you guys who have already built this infrastructure. I was thinking like this kid is just saying that because obviously this takes a lot of time, a lot of effort into getting that project to fruition. I completely understand, but I will have to keep it on the parallel rather than leaving.
Look, I think it's incredible smart. By the way, I'm also the only person that refers to the letter Z as Z and not Z on this call. So it's just, my God. So you got introduced to what digital infrastructure is through the NVIDIA research that you did at Barclays.
Yeah.
How did you find Nomad Futurist? How did that come about?
When I went to India for the second time, I researched about the industry a little bit, came back to the US for my semester, kept researching about it, started reading books about it, started watching podcasts about it, started figuring out about what CoreWeave is, what are the big players here. And that's how I consumed my information. And then once I was able to see who are the right players in the industry, I started just cold emailing thousands of companies. I started from Europe. I didn't tell them that I want to build in this industry or anything. I initially told them that I have a project in NYU that I want to help with, because I knew that if I am saying that, okay, I want to start a business in the industry, they're going to be, why would we reply to this kid? People generally don't talk about it much. But I started saying that, oh, I'm a college kid and I want to start a project. Started emailing a couple of people in Europe, in the US, and then got connected to Joanna Saucy from Align Data Centers. She gave me a meeting and she was like, okay, Align Data Center does a lot of work in helping students grow as well, but you should connect with Nomad Futures. They help students get exposure in the industry. They want younger people in the industry, so they will be a great people to talk to. Then I kept the same energy going on that realm. I don't know if you got multiple CC'd emails or forwarded emails, because I just went to the Nomad website and emailed everybody that was mentioned on the website. So I got multiple forward CCs saying that this kid is interested. And then had a meeting with Nabeel. I remember he gave me a great perspective on the industry and how I should be thinking about it rather than just thinking about it from just a profit point of view. I still remember that. He said that you have to also think from a point of view, like if you were going to be building this infrastructure, how you're going to add to your country, how you're going to add to your country's economy, how you're going to add to your country's people, how you're going to add to the country's talent. And that also gave me a great perspective on industry, because again, when I started figuring out how much this industry touches, I was like, yeah, this is something I really want to do, and it's going to be a great exposure for me. And then again, had a meeting with Nabeel. Nabeel said that you were a young kid, we need an advocate for Nomad Futures, and you should try and try out the position. And after that, obviously, the journey has been great. Got exposure in DCD, met Phillip in person in DCD. The team is great. The industry in general is very great. Everybody has been so welcoming, and the hospitality has been amazing. Obviously, me, I was going around DCD as a college kid, just saying that I want to do this. And some people are looking like me, like, okay, what is this kid talking about? Doesn't even understand what it is. And then there are some people who were ready to sit down, explain me what I should be doing. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? Is my thinking process correct? How I can approach investors and all these things. So that's been great. That's how I found Nomad, and then the exposure was great.
Brilliant. So one question I have, of course, we had wonderful conversations, and I'm excited that you're a part of the sector. For somebody that's not been in it, and DCD, I don't really remember how many people were there, but I would imagine a few thousand people in New York City. With all that craziness, did you feel that you got the answers? Were people welcoming enough to have a chat with you and share where we're at as a sector and what the future entails?
Surprisingly enough, a lot, because as I said, this industry, as nobody wants to welcome new people in the industry. The people in the industry are very great. The intellectual capital is great. I also think that people on helping and empathy level have also been great, especially this is my personal experience. When I was trying to get exposure to understand the industry in DCD, what the industry is going, what's the future outlook about, especially growing industries, because initially, like the first day I was like, okay, DCD is primarily just for like the US market. But then I went to a couple of more conferences or like a couple of more panel discussions. Then I said that, yeah, the emerging market is also a huge talking point and everybody's interested into it. So then I started picking and choosing people from panels, just going up to them and talking about it. And everybody has been great. I've connected them outside of DCD as well, a couple of people. And as soon as I put in the student point of view, or like I'm a young person in the generation, or like a young person trying to come to the industry, there were people even giving me like cards, just saying, if you want to have a chat, if you want to talk, just come to us and have a chat. So the exposure was huge. People have been very welcoming, and getting exposure into different parts of the industry, especially on the investment side, people have been great, and the exposure has been great. So there's been investment companies that I've been talking to about the emerging markets or about my business idea that I was practically just recruiting for like a year ago. Like these companies, I'm trying to get interviews from these companies to potentially have an analyst position. in their office. And now these companies are ready to have a brief conversation about me and see what we're thinking about, what our thinking process is. Is there something that they can invest in? That's just surreal for me how so fast things have been switching. So yeah, the people are great.
I'm kind of speechless. I was not expecting any of that. I know things are progressing, and I see that you're actively engaged and you're helping the team with the reviewing the academy, the content that's been worked on as well. This is really, really very touching. What we set forth to do as an organization and to be able to be in a position to help people like yourself, not only just expose the sector, but to welcome you in the space and being there for you and to support the next generation in the queue is what we've set forth to do. So thank you for sharing that with the audience here. Going forward, now I know it's less than a year that you've been exposed to the sector. I can totally get it. You probably have got a million ideas. You'll just have to narrow it down to potentially 10. So what's the future for Arnav? You're going to be graduating here very soon. You are at the right place at the right time. Timing cannot be any better than this. This is like someone's tossing you a full toss so you can hit a sixer.
Oh God, are we talking, is this cricket? Are we talking
That-
cricket? For God's sakes.
Well,
Translate
baseball,
that
it's gonna be
into
a home
baseball. Should we translate that into baseball? Somebody threw you a grapefruit and you hit a home run.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Exactly. So what's next for you? What are you looking at? What's the next big thing that you're pursuing now, based on what you know today?
So again, as I mentioned, this is going to be in the parallel. I will be working in the financial industry a couple of years and then also working this on the parallel. But in terms of what's the next steps is that, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, is that I sat with people at DCD, people who are building this infrastructure, and I was able to get a roadmap on what I should be doing in terms of building this company. So there has been some set rules and roadmaps that I have got by people, like what should be my next steps to expand this. I have that. And then from an Indian perspective, the talent over there is great. There is an infrastructure requirement. So that's something that our idea, it can grow and can expand a lot. So the next steps is to start working on the company and start getting tangibility to my idea. Right now, it's just some white paper and me talking to people about it. And now people gave me a roadmap. So right now we're in the process for looking for land for the infrastructure. We're already doing that. We started talking to people in the energy space in India to see what we can do. So we are already in the process of looking for land. And then we have already talked to people about energy. So there are a couple of companies that are ready to give us like 20 to 30 megawatt, or even green energy in India, which is amazing. We got a couple of contacts from a couple of conferences also that we went to in India. So we have the energy part sorted out a little bit, but the next steps is to try and figure out licensing for the company and like what certification and licensing we need. And then so hit the market running in terms of financing. Obviously, as everybody knows, that this is a very capital intensive idea and there's a lot of capital needs. So the next steps will be just looking for capital and pitching our idea to people. And yeah, that's going to be the next roadmap. The next big thing is focusing a little bit on my financial career or my career in finance, and then putting all my effort with my brother to get this identification. Obviously, you guys are there for the mentorship. So we'll be bugging you guys with a lot of questions and ideas and what I should be doing. And then, just leaving the Nomad Futures, also the learning part, also the exposure part, to see how I can add it to my venture, and obviously see how I can give back to Nomad as well. Because again, I just don't want to be someone who's just keep taking, not giving something back in return. So also trying to figure out how I can be an addition to giving back to Nomad.
The branches of the banyan tree grow down into roots. Oh my God. It's almost like we have that logo for a reason. Look, I think anybody that has a perspective that the generation coming out of college these days is lazy needs to listen to Arnav. I'm exhausted just hearing what his plan is for the next 2 years, much less the next 10 or 15. I think we talk a lot about, being in the right place at the right time, and 90% of success is just showing up. And I think what you acutely embody is the benefit of putting yourself out there. I remember I wrote my college admission essay was on just a particular characteristic about myself that I thought was a good one. And people will disagree as to whether they think it is good or not, but persistence was what I wrote about, and that you embody that kind of persistent drive. And what Nomad Futurist, as Nabeel said, was put on this planet to do is to essentially provide exposure to young people, not to give them motivation, but to kind of harness their God-given motivation and figure out how they can participate in this industry by giving them the exposure to it. We were fortunate that you came on as an advocate right around the time that there happened to be a data center conference happening in New York City, which was right in your backyard, when we brought, Julia and Luciana, and we had the events and we got the booth, and, everything just kind of fell into place. But inevitably, that is why we will continue to strive to reach out to young people to make sure that the conferences that we are partnered with or present the ability for students to come in to gain exposure to an industry in person, where you can have a conversation with someone and not just feel like you're sending emails out into a black hole of emails where people are getting them either through LinkedIn or wherever. Is so important. The value, certainly, that I saw that you had from the in-person engagement, associated with the kind of sheer energy that you feel at a conference like DCD or Data Center World that just ended, or ITW that's coming up in a couple of weeks. It's palpable. It's the people respond totally differently when you're there in person, and your experience, should be inspiring for, not just future generations of unnamed folks, but people that are in school right now that want to know how they can participate in this industry. And Arnav is an example to you all. So congratulations on all that you've accomplished, really through sheer force of will.
Thank you so much.
Arnav, so before we let you go, this has been absolutely amazing. And like Bill said, we are very excited to have you on board. Create a cheat sheet for the ones like you that don't know about this sector as to the possibilities in the process that they should follow, and how do you engage?
In terms of trying to know more about the industry?
Yeah.
Start with listening to podcasts and books. There's a lot of information out there. Then obviously leverage the Nomad Future Academy. There's a lot of great content coming in. I just reviewed the JLL content, because that content starts from the basic and goes very in depth. So using that content will be great. There's a lot of resources out there for it. If you need industry-specific reports, there are a huge amount of reports out there. All the consulting companies are doing it. I have a lot of them. You can email me on my NYU email. If you guys want to put it on in the description or whatever, I can give you these thousands of reports that I have been going through. So there's a lot of industry reports out there. So using and leveraging the Nomad Academy. Secondly, I'll say the reports that all these consulting companies are putting it out there. And then thirdly, I'll say is reaching out to people, getting into these conferences, getting the live exposure is the biggest thing. The most that I've learned in these past 7-8 months was from the live exposure at DCD. So if you guys can bug Nabeel and Phillip and email them 15,000 times about giving them these expensive conference tickets, so that's going to be a great exposure. And yeah, just talking to people, any industry that I have tapped into, being very limited to finance and now in the technology or digital infrastructure space, the way I've learned is just cold emailing people, and not even just cold emailing, just trying to leverage whatever contacts I have in front of me and just having these in person or these coffee chats. So do that. And then obviously try and get in the industry. The amount of information you learn being in it is way different than you learn from the theory that's been taught. So somehow, if you're interested in the industry, be in the industry, and that's going to be a good point for you.
I was just hoping for a very simple, cheat sheet for all the emails that you sent out. You can reach out to nomadfutures.org. We will be the...
No, just email Joanna. No, do not email Joanna. I think that's the key, right? What we're trying to build with the Academy is this community where we're aggregating all of this information. So all of, the reports that Arnav found fascinating, those can be made available on the Nomad Futurist Academy. That is going to be where everyone starts and interacts with the community. And if you can imagine Arnav being one person that has experienced this, and all of the experiences he has will be aggregated into this thing that is going to really lay the foundation for, how the next generation gets involved in our industry. So thank you so much for being you, Arnav, and I can't wait to see where you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, and looking forward to staying in touch and looking forward to the future.
Thank you for joining us on the Nomad Futurist podcast. Remember, technology, markets, and challenges will continue to evolve, but those who adapt and prepare are the ones who will thrive. Embrace the change, stay curious, and let's build a future worth moving towards. The journey has just begun, and we're glad you're here with us. Visit us anytime at media.nomadfuturist.org. Stay connected and be a part of the movement. Until next time, keep exploring.